What would you say?
I have no idea, man.
Because without this, our whole understanding of even logic, even mathematics, everything fails. This consciousness is something that is quite important. Now the question arises, I don't know, do you believe in God, or are you an agnostic or an atheist? I don't know.
To save time,
yeah.
Unfortunately we have to categorize. You could say agnostic. Because I don't know it. I don't know everything.
No. Fair enough. You see, one thing that the people who don't believe in God, and I'm not saying you don't believe in God, because you said you're agnostic, you're on the fence, undecided. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, undecided. That's the reason you're sitting on the fence and saying, I don't know whether God exists or not. Am I right?
Probably about lack of evidence.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're looking for evidence in terms of what would satisfy you or make your belief go from agnostic to atheist. What is it you're looking for? What is the criteria you're looking for?
Yeah, I've been asked that question before.
Yeah.
But maybe I have a completely different conception of what God might be.
Okay.
You know, from you. So I'm not sure I can answer that so well. Although about consciousness, it would be interesting to talk a bit more about that.
Okay, let's talk about consciousness. No problem.
Possibly like maybe just put it into context.
Yeah, sure.
Would you say cross-analysis and meta-analysis as well? Because you said it's knowledge. So you want to read up, you want to explore different religions before you make a conscious decision whether or not you are.
Absolutely.
So would you say meta-analysis? Just to contextualize, I guess. Like,
Sure. I need to research many things.
Absolutely.
Before I would make any choice, you know. But about consciousness, so there's an idea.
What is your understanding of consciousness? Let's start with that.
I'm not sure. So let's see. It's an idea that it's a product of our advanced brains. That it's a byproduct of evolution. In that.
Really?
Well, yeah, because one of the major things that we use our consciousness for is to understand the possibilities of the future and understand the experience of the past. And that's one of the reasons in theory that we're such good survivors.
So you're saying that an organism that cannot think about the future is not conscious, by your definition?
I can't really make a scientific definition of it.
It's not a scientific definition, trust me. The definition you gave, I'm working with that. So you're saying for us to predict the future, for example, how to survive better and so on, okay? So my counter question to that would be, an organism like amoeba, yes, who doesn't really plan for the future, yes, all he cares about is trying to survive the best possibility, trying to eat, trying to basically do whatever it wants, yes, in the simplest form. Does it have consciousness? Is it aware of its surrounding?
Most likely not.
It is. Otherwise it wouldn't be able to feed. You see what I mean?
No,
in order for you to understand the difference between what is food and what is not food, you need to be aware of your environment, yes? You can't just eat everything, because everything that amoeba comes across is not food.
I don't think it's that simple.
No, I'm saying to be aware of your environment is one of the key things for your consciousness to be active.
But that's not what I said. I talked about conceptualizing possibilities in the future and understanding the experience of the past.
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking. Your definition seems very limited to what consciousness really is. Because consciousness, for example, are you conscious that you exist?
Not this one again.
It's not. Right, cool. It can sound philosophical.
No, it is.
But because
I'm aware of the
but because of the definition of consciousness, you need to understand first whether you exist, whether that your surrounding is something that is real, is not some aliens who got some device in your brain and trying to basically create this environment around you.
Yeah.
So are you aware that you're conscious? Are you aware that you exist? What's that? God, big one. I thought it was a toy for me. Okay. All right,
well, it's the brain in the jar argument.
What do you think of that?
Well, I had this discussion one time before here on Speaker's Corner.
Okay.
And I don't particularly think most people want to hear it again, because it's really a dead end. I'm aware that I think and that I understand my own thoughts, but everything outside of that, I can't actually prove that it exists or not. But I run on the assumption that it does.
But even you saying, I think, yes? How do you know that is you thinking? Or somebody forcing you to think the way you think?
Maybe you don't, maybe it's true, maybe you aren't.
So you see, even your thinking, even the most basic of that, you are unsure of.
But it is something that would exist.
Okay.
If we talk about existence.
For many atheists, I'm not saying for you, for many atheists, all this, I know, that's why I said not for you. I made it very clear. So for many atheists, all this existence is just meaningless. It doesn't have a meaning. So everything is just random matter, yes? coming together randomly, producing all these effects from that particular cause. Yes?
Could you not make your own meaning though?
You could, but I'm saying we need to then understand or basically analyze that particular definition. It's quite important, isn't it? So if everything was meaningless, like they say, I'm not saying like you say, then for us, even consciousness doesn't even matter. Everything is just meaningless, just random material coming together and just behaving randomly, and one day this is going to finish. And that's why we come. You see, for us as theists, for us as someone who believes in God, we start with the premise that God exists. You know why? Because we believe that there has to be some cause to bring all these things, material and non-material, into existence. And if there is an alternative, from your perspective, what would that be? The existence of everything.
Okay, it could exist by chance for no reason.
No, but how does it originate?
I have no idea. It can't be answered.
You must have thought about it.
Sure, but how could I possibly answer that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
What do you guys think about the...
What do you guys? You mean the agnostic?
The two of you.
Oh, the two of them. Sorry. I
Just
just
a random philosophical question. What do you guys think about the idea that even within nothing, there is still something?
I don't buy that.
Just in the sense that nothing is still something.
No, nothing doesn't exist, my friend.
Something.
Nothing doesn't exist. It's a concept.
But that's what I'm trying to say. The concept still exists.
Yeah, but the concept doesn't exist in the sense that it is something that is, for example, infinity.
Yeah.
Does it exist?
Does infinity exist?
Yes.
Can't be proven.
No, but does it exist?
No.
There you go. So concept of nothing is similar to infinity. One is extreme at this edge and the other is extreme the other end. Because infinity, in order for the mathematicians to do certain calculations and for the philosophers to understand certain concepts, yes, we use this term for us human beings to basically communicate effectively. Same thing with nothing. Because to me, nothing is basically the absence of everything. If it's absence of everything, I believe it doesn't even exist.
But then
it's just a concept for us to communicate better. That's all.
I was treating it as almost a, like how you kind of reference light is the absence of darkness, and darkness is the absence of light.
Yeah, but light is photons, you know. Light is not nothing. Light is nothing. But if you talk about darkness,
light is very interesting because it has mass and it doesn't have mass.
Well, that is it still matter. For us, look.
Exists.
For us, I didn't say anything about mass. Remember, I said about something. When I say something, to me, light is something. It's not nothing. Light is something. Yes. Some people call it waves. Some call it particles, and they both are correct.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's nothing.
No,
light is something.
Absolutely.
Darkness, that's a good thing. What you just defined, I agree with that. Is the absence of light. But does it exist? Yes, absence of light exists in many places. In space, there is no light, but there is darkness there. But that is just space, maybe empty space. What I'm saying is that space itself exists. Yes? Does time exist?
Yeah.
Does time exist?
Well, I'm not sure how time is correctly defined because it might be the time is measured in how things change. You can't see time unless things change.
Yeah. So time is not material. You're right. Time is not material. It is it's a means of measurement of how we linearly think. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to think many things. And it's again a concept to measure basically a change from A to B. So everything is measured.
I just wanted to.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that there are many things in our conversation that we talk about which might just be concepts, but they are quite important concepts without which it's not possible to have a meaningful discussion. So if anyone says nothing exists, then they don't know the meaning of it. Nothing. Because to me, nothing is a concept. It is not something that exists in real world. It is a concept to understand the absence of everything.
But then something has to exist for you to make that assertion. If nothing ever exists,
you exist. You're making that assertion.
No, absolutely. But if nothing exists, right, and nothing is defined by the existence of something, right? So we measure nothing by the absence of something.
Not really.
Do we not?
Are you able to understand something without knowing anything about nothing?
Yes.
Are you able to know something? For example, if I asked you, okay, this microphone here, if you didn't know the meaning of nothing, does it still exist?
Of course.
So you don't need nothing, the understanding of nothing, to make sense of everything else.
No, I understand.
Because you see, for us, our senses are adequate to understand most things. Yes? our senses are adequate to understand most things. However, there are certain things which our senses are unable to pick up. We use certain devices, for example, radio waves. You got a mobile phone? Yes. Do you see the radio waves? No. Do dogs hear radio waves?
Yes.
No, they don't. Yes, they're sound waves. You're thinking about sound waves. Radio waves are different. So radio waves are measured by certain devices which scientists have invented, and they can measure that. But the thing is, what I'm saying is that even for that, we need our senses to decipher the result of those devices. So we still use our senses. What I was getting about, so I think the conversation started with consciousness. So you see, the reason the scientists community and those people who are philosophers and other people as well, they talk about consciousness is because this is something very difficult to pinpoint. Yes, the definition of it, to understand it, yes, you can have scores of definitions about it. But the important thing is that we all recognize that it exists. It's not a concept. It is something that truly exists. And for us to make meaning of anything, your and my consciousness is vital. It's very, very important.
Well, one thing that's interesting about conceptions of consciousness is that there may be consciousnesses, if that's the plural, that are greater than ours.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's just an interesting idea. You know, because we're at this level, but maybe there's something greater.
Yeah, there might be some people who might have higher consciousness than us. They might be able to have this something called the sixth sense, you know. Who knows? Maybe that is a different kind of consciousness, a different level that they operate on. I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is that consciousness does exist. And the question for the materialists, yes, and this is where you come in. Even though you're an agnostic, you still believe in materialism to some degree. Because the answers that you'll be seeking about God are most likely from a materialistic perspective, that you will be seeking some sort of, because I'm not saying you're saying this, many people will say, show me God, that he exists. If I can't see him, I don't believe in him. Yes, to me that's ludicrous. Because you see, with our naked eye, we cannot even see the sun on a nice sunny day, yes, without having an issue by looking at it directly.
Sure, but we
how
have
can you
evidence
see
that it exists.
No, I'm not saying it isn't, it's just an analogy.
Right.
Yes? So there are many things that we cannot see with our naked eye. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I'll give you an example of the radio waves. Yes? So what I'm saying is that this is not something that is a criteria you should be looking for in seeking God. You see, we see the world around us. That is something that is a definite, that is a given. It is. I personally don't think that's an illusion. I think it does really exist. I think you both exist in front of me and I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to you some sort of an, holographic creation, simulation here. I'm talking to real people, not a matrix, not something that is made up by simulation. It's real. Now, for all this to exist, we need to ask the question, where did it originate from? Because you see, mostly science tells you how things came, what it is, yes, not how it came into being, not the origin of it. Absolutely. Yes? So it's the other way around. They don't say what, they answer the how. The how these things work or how that thing works. But how it originates, they don't tell you that.
Yeah, because we don't know.
I don't think the scientists...
That's intellectual honesty.
But the thing is,
that was why I posed the question.
To know something, yes, the scientists need at least two things. Without that, they will not be able to operate. Time and space. Yes? In order to postulate any theory, in their minds, they need to know the concept of time and the concept of space. Without that, they're handicapped. You cannot even think of a theory to postulate, let alone perform an experiment in a lab. So you see, science is if you're looking for scientific evidence of something without time and space, then I think you're using the wrong tool, because science is unable...
No evidence for God.
No, I'm saying science is not a tool.
So there's no scientific evidence for God.
Well, I think there's something, when you think about scientific methodology, there are many methodologies, okay? They use, for example, either tools of observation, or they use something called, you can think of certain theories without it even being existing. And you can say, okay, I rule out this, I rule out that, and I've come to the conclusion that this is the only way. So if we use that methodology of basically understanding how everything came into existence, you come, and correct me if I'm wrong, to two possibilities. Either it came from something, or it came from nothing. If you narrow it down to the simplest digits, to say...
I got a question for you, by the way.
Sorry, I just want
do you agree with that?
No, I absolutely agree.
That it comes either... Look, it did not create itself because the universe is not conscious.
Well, you're saying it didn't create itself. You assume that you know the answer, but you can't possibly
I'm asking you a question. Is the universe conscious?
I'm asking you, how could you know the origin of the universe?
No, because we know that matter, for example, is not something that is, sorry, when I say matter, I mean non-sentient beings, non-sentient things, in whether it is a rock or whether it is the clouds or something like that. Do you think these inanimate objects have consciousness?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the universe, when I talk about the universe, I'm talking about the inanimate objects within the universe. Do they have consciousness? Because before life existed, yes, from a scientific perspective, they believe that the universe existed, like 13.8 billion years or whatever it is, yeah? Nearly 14 billion years ago.
Okay.
It came into being. Yeah. At that time, there was no life. And they agree with that, yes? Because the environment to support life wasn't there. So the question arises to you, does the universe, which consists of inanimate objects at that time, when there was no environment to support life, was that universe conscious? The early stages of the universe.
By the way that I characterize consciousness of myself, probably not.
Good. So inanimate objects, do you agree, don't have consciousness?
Well, I can't tell, but I would say probably
I'm saying
not.
Inanimate objects. Why would you say probably?
Because
until you had certain idea that there is a possibility for an inanimate object to have consciousness. Because many people say energy is conscious.
I think
this is something that they have to prove.
Of what we're saying.
Yes.
I think that might be the difference in where we're coming from. Maybe is
I mean,
like
you're coming from proof, and he's coming from a faith.
No, I'm seeking proof. I'm also seeking proof. That's the reason I asked for evidence, if there is any, to show that inanimate objects have consciousness.
But what is faith?
The only reason you're saying probably is because you're uncertain that they have consciousness or they don't have consciousness.
Yeah, because it's,
to me, whenever I look at inanimate objects, I don't see consciousness. I don't see that a rock is aware of its environment. So if I go to strike it with a hammer, the rock won't just move away, trying to protect itself.
Yeah.
Or the rock
my
is seeking some.
My perspective is that we have a very limited realm of knowledge, and our knowledge is constantly advancing. And who knows how our perceptions and conceptions of ideas will change in the future as we discover more. That's my perspective as a skeptic.
No, but the thing is, even then, when you talk about consciousness, yes, you are aware of animate objects and inanimate objects. The reason they're called animate is because of this life that they have, they possess.
I understand that. As I completely understand.
Now, what you're doing is that in the future we might know, but in the future you might not never know either. Okay, so this principle of inanimate objects having no consciousness, no life, is something that is going to stand throughout time. Who knows?
Maybe
No,
so.
I understand.
Yes, but the thing is this: if the universe, we have to go with past now, not the future. We have to go with past.
Okay.
In the past, if the universe came into being, and we know that it came into being, it didn't exist at one point, then it began to exist. Do you agree with that, or?
I've heard the theories.
What do you think? What do you think?
I've heard the theory that there was a point of nothingness and the universe expanded. I've also heard theories that the universe has expanded and exploded and contracted throughout history. It's something that we can't possibly know.
No, but
it doesn't really matter
that
what I think.
the second theory that you mentioned, that the problem with that eternal universe is the problem that's going to arise for that is the infinite regression. Because infinite regression means something that you cannot perceive something to exist if there is the issue of infinite regression. Like, I don't know if you've heard of this analogy of a library in which you're standing to borrow a book and there's an infinite number of people in front of you. Remember we talked about infinite earlier to understand the concept in our communication? So imagine if there are infinite number of people standing in front of you. Will you ever be able to borrow a book?
Probably not. But I mean, I don't really know where you're going with it.
No,
I'm not supporting the idea.
It's not probably not, it is never. The reason for that is there is infinite number of people, meaning not ending. It will never end.
Cool.
So you will never get a book. So if you use that infinite regression in this eternal universe theory, then you will understand that universe cannot exist if there was such a scenario of infinite regression. You see what I mean?
Well, I think one of the core differences, like what you said, belief and skepticism. The other thing is I'm comfortable with uncertainty. That's where I'm coming from.
No, it's not the uncertainty.
I'm going to say what I think.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm comfortable with being uncertain, of not knowing, of wanting to understand, and I'm not wanting to force that on you. Like, you think whatever you want, that's cool. But like for me, I'm okay with not being sure. Like, maybe we have a conception of logic, and we're running off logic. We're trying to look at the universe, that'd be an infinite progression. That's illogical. How can that happen? But maybe there's a realm of existence where logic, as humans understand it, is not applicable.
Sorry, a realm where there is no logic applied?
It's
okay, now you see, when you say that is a possibility, that is illogical. So I tell you why. Because for you to think of something illogical to exist, for example, if you can think about a pink elephant flying,